Welcome to the Retire with Purpose podcast, a show specifically designed to help pre-retirees and retirees maximize their financial confidence. Casey Weed is a certified financial planner and president of Howard Bailey Financial. His newest book, Job Optional, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller and is available now on Amazon and at retirewithpurpose.com. He's your host on Retire with Purpose.
Hey, I'm Casey, and I believe in retirement strategies that are driven by meaning and purpose. Join me this week and every week as we discuss thoughts and ideas with some of today's foremost experts in the field of finance and retirement, as well as discussing trending topics that could impact your bottom line. These discussions can help you make better financial decisions so you can live the lifestyle you've always imagined and deserve. Welcome to the show. Hey, what's up, y'all? I am here today with my good friend and co-host for these special Friday editions. We've got Marshall Johnson here with me.
Hey.
And today we are covering one of our 4 weekend reading articles we sent out as part of our Weekend Reading for Retirees email series. That's 4 articles with summaries and takeaways delivered to your inbox every single Friday. You can sign up at retirewithpurpose.com. First name and email will get you started. As a bonus for signing up for Weekend Reading, we will send out an email right before we actually record an interview-based podcast, and you can submit your questions there, and then we will present those questions to our world-class guests. Today, we are covering an article written by Wade Pfau and Alex Murgia. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Dr. Pfau, not really familiar with Alex so much. However, the article does come to us from Advisor Perspectives, covers a very important topic. So if you're thinking retirement income, if you're getting ready to make that transition, you're already in retirement, you're taking a distribution every single month or every year to cover those income needs, this is a very important article as it's covering this topic. So the title is Why Risk Tolerance Questionnaires Don't Work for Determining Retirement Strategies.
In a good frame of reference to is this advisor perspective, it's geared towards advisors, right? Wade Pfau is leading researcher around retirement and retirement income strategies.
He is really the only professor of retirement income that I know, right? And that's why he's been on our podcast a couple of different times to discuss a couple of different books that he's put out there. One of them being the safety first approach to retirement income planning. And he talks about, I think he does a good job in here actually, and this is what he had committed to last time I discussed this. Definitely, he said he would start to talk about more sophisticated income strategies over time. He just wanted to kind of release it one bit at a time. And I think what he's finding is the same challenge that I've found when putting together retirement income plans is that there's not really an easy way to gauge which retirement income strategy is right for you.
Exactly.
Because this whole industry has been built around accumulation and growing your assets, not generating retirement income and covering all those other retirement risks that you're going to face. If we just look at retirement income planning in a vacuum, I actually tried to create exactly what he created here. So he talks about a risk tolerance questionnaire and how that's one element of creating a retirement income strategy, but it's not the starting point.
Well, and if anybody's ever worked with a financial advisor or a large firm, they've undoubtedly filled out one of these questionnaires, right? Your age, your demographic, your income levels, and then they walk you through a series of questions trying to determine what your comfortability is with volatility. Can you handle market ups and downs? What did you do last time the market dropped? And they're just trying to fit you into a model.
Well, that doesn't reduce the number of retirement income strategies you have to choose from. That will dial you into the amount of risk you should take. Should you be 60-40 or 30-70?
And while you're
80-20?
in your accumulation years, that's perfect. And that's what he says here. You know, during those accumulation years, you're just trying to figure out what your risk level is for your savings vehicles, your accumulation vehicos.
He is not dismissing this in any way. He's not dismissing the risk tolerance questionnaire. He is still emphasizing the value of it. But I think he makes a really good comparison here. He says, using a risk tolerance questionnaire to establish a retirement income strategy is akin to your doctor checking your pulse to measure your cholesterol. Now, is it still important to check the pulse while we're measuring cholesterol? Absolutely. You might have high blood pressure, right? We still want to check all of these different elements. However, we're putting the proverbial cart ahead of the horse. We need to start somewhere else because on the way to retirement, your human capital is how you pay for the bills. So you're investing for the long term.
Right.
And those RTQs, those risk tolerance questionnaires, they identify the amount of volatility that you're able to stomach with your investment portfolio. However, retirement's different. Retirement is about a life transition. It's a transition away from just being dependent on your human capital to fund your spending goals. Now, it's a transition from that human capital to your investment capital, and that changes the mental calculus. Think about it. If you're funding most of your essential expenses from your investment portfolio, that phrase you've heard from the media and your advisor over and over again, investing for the long term. We're investing for the long term. It's incomplete. Yes, your retirement may last 30 years. However, retirement's triggering all new risks. You need that portfolio to not just be there for 20, 30 years, you need it to be there for a lifetime, and actually an unknown lifetime.
Yeah, unknown lifetime. If you think about retirement, most of the time we have a benchmark, whether it's 55, 65, 70. It's not an uncertain amount of time. Most people have some kind of a vague idea of when they'd like to retire. But life expectancy, much different animal, and we have to prepare for longer and longer longevity.
Yeah, it doesn't take into consideration sequence of returns risk. It doesn't take into consideration spending shocks, other contingencies, long-term care, a large healthcare bill, inflation, and so much more. There's new retirement risks that Wade tries to categorize into three main areas.
Three L's.
The three L's. That's good. I didn't even see. He didn't abbreviate that one. And
that's how I saw
the three L's. He does RTQ, but not the three L's.
Longevity, lifestyle, and liquidity.
Yeah, so what are these things? Longevity, this is outliving your money. And I think this is akin to a flooring approach, right? This is your non-discretionary expenses. Longevity is about making sure you won't outlive your money, and it will always be there to cover your basic living needs. You will never be a burden on someone else. You will always maintain a base level of financial independence that covers your daily living expenses, your housing, your healthcare, your food, et cetera. Lifestyle's a little different. Yeah,
lifestyle is that fun stuff, right? It's the things that you add to it. Maybe it's helping the kids. Maybe it's taking trips. Maybe it's funding businesses. There's a lot of things that could go into this bucket.
And liquidity is up next. So liquidity is what? That's just maintaining reserves for the unexpected. Family emergencies, home repairs, illness, and just filling in the gaps maybe when there's an unexpected market downturn. It's just how much, in my mind, I see it as three different areas: longevity, making sure we have money to last the rest of our lives, lifestyle, making sure, well, you know what, I really want to increase my lifestyle over time. I might want to do these one-offs where I want to take all the grandkids on a Disney cruise.
There you go.
Maybe I want to go buy a second home somewhere. Those are those lifestyle things. Maybe you have a goal of buying a new Mustang or getting yourself a new Corvette. And then there's liquidity, which I see as flexibility largely. How much flexibility do we want in that plan? And if we look at each one of those, we're going to emphasize each one in a different way. So if we emphasize longevity, we say, you know what, I really want to make sure I'm never outliving my money. That's the number one priority. And lifestyle, I'm not a big lifestyle person. I'm not someone that's going to go out and spend a bunch of money on wine and cars and the fluffy stuff. Yeah. Just make sure my money's there for the rest of my life. Well, that leads you to more of a less flexible strategy where you have more guarantees.
More of a safety
you say,
first. Yeah.
Well, I overweight lifestyle, I overweight that discretionary spending, well, that might lend itself to more of a market-based approach with less or no guarantees whatsoever. But then you also have to incorporate liquidity, because liquidity is also a trade-off from those things. The more liquidity and flexibility that you would like to have, well, that's going to lend itself to more of an at-risk strategy, less contractual guarantees. So you want to take all of these different things into consideration, and most of these retirement concerns, they're largely absent from investment consideration while you're accumulating your assets.
Exactly. And they're not present on those questionnaires. So we have to incorporate them into the process. And I think, Casey, I'm reminded the longevity risk, we didn't have to deal with this 20, 30 years ago because those generations had pensions and they had Social Security that largely covered all of the flooring that they ever needed. Now we've got new concerns and new challenges.
Well, and then Wade goes to, maybe it's Alex that goes there, but Wade and Alex, they go on to explain 4 different approaches to generating a retirement income.
Right.
And depending on your answers to, I'm more concerned about flexibility, or I want more opportunity for growth, or I want more guaranteed income, those answers will lead you down the path to picking the right approach. Is it a total return approach, a protected income approach, a risk wrap approach, a time segmented approach? And Marshall, let's just kind of touch on what each one of those are.
Yeah, the total return approach just means you prefer to draw your income from a diversified investment portfolio.
It's a 4% withdrawal rule.
Yeah, rather than going out and getting those contractual guarantees. There's no safety in that approach.
Well, there's no plan. I mean, I personally, I would not put this into the retirement income strategy category. And frankly, I'm kind of surprised that Wade would. I mean, this is purely a probability-based approach. You're just taking the probability of, hey, I've got an 85% of not outliving my money. Yeah, and I wouldn't put this into that category. In my book, I go through all these approaches and I say, hey, this is not a real income strategy, because it's not a strategy.
It's an investment strategy.
That's a modern portfolio strategy to me. You go, hey, you know what? I'm comfortable taking a level 70 risk, and I'm going to take 4% out a year, and you know what? I'm willing to cut my expenses if the market takes a dive.
Yeah, right.
I go, that's not a plan to me. I don't mind if you're a 70, but why don't we take that same approach and separate it out in different buckets? I think you could take a bucket approach that would give you the same allocation as you're going to end up with a total return approach.
Absolutely.
Generally speaking, because you're going to say time segmented approach. Well, you know what? I landed in a 70-30 mix. I'm going to have 70% in equities. Great. We're going to set aside 70% in equities in a separate bucket, and you're going to take your income from the fixed income during that first leg. And depending on what that number is, if you're an 80 or a 90, that's just leaving less and less for us to secure more income on the front end.
Right.
And you could secure that first leg of income that's 30% or 20%, whatever that percentage is that's going to go to fixed income. It doesn't have to be bonds. It could be fixed annuities. It could be fixed index annuities.
Cash.
It could be an immediate annuity. And that's what you're seeing a lot of advisors do today. Due to low interest rates that we're getting on bonds, they're going, hey, well, why don't we just replace those bonds with some type of contractually guaranteed product? It doesn't really matter what it is. It's just the idea of, instead of total return, why don't we go to a time segmented approach and replace the bonds, or keep the bonds but set them into a separate bucket that we're going to spend first?
Yeah, so you're bucketing. A lot of times we hear that as a bucket strategy, and I think it works well, as you said, depending on how aggressive somebody wants to be. They could have a 5-year bucket. They could have a 2-year bucket. They could have a 3-year bucket. But you got to have some protection against the sequence of returns risk.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. It's Casey, and I know you're listening to the Retire with Purpose podcast because you want to maximize your financial efficiency and plan for a retirement that's filled with meaning and purpose. So I've got something for you. If you want to take this a step further, I want you to head on over to retirewithpurpose.com and sign up for Weekend Reading for Retirees. This is a collection of handpicked articles with commentary from myself sent every Friday straight to your inbox. Sign up, and I'll send you an email right away containing one of my favorite recent podcast interviews with insights into my biggest takeaways. Second, I want to share one of my favorite articles featured in my Weekend Reading for Retirees, along with commentary and an ebook copy of my best-selling book, Job Optional. And finally, I want to invite you to my upcoming webinar, where I take a deep dive into important concepts that will help educate you on making informed decisions for your best retirement. I want to provide you with the best of the best resources of what we have here at Howard Bailey to offer, and we've made it easy to get started right now. Again, all you need to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com, sign up for Weekend Reading for Retirees, and we will help get you on track to living a secure retirement that's filled with meaning and purpose today.
And then you have what he calls the protected income approach, and
which is like a floor. Right?
I see it as flooring. I see this one really as flooring myself. He says, it's a contractually guaranteed income floor. Now, what's interesting about this is he says you can add a total return approach on top of that. That's what becomes flooring, right? So you say, you know what? I want to make sure I always have $3,000 a month for the rest of my life. So we cut out a portion of the portfolio to guarantee $3,000 a month for the rest of your life. And then you say, I'd like to have some discretionary money that I'm willing to cut back from time to time of another $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
So we set that portfolio aside somewhere else where we have more upside potential, we have more flexibility, and you're taking that non-discretionary income or that discretionary income from the total return approach or the market money. And I would still say, hey, on that total return approach money, why wouldn't we still create a leg 1? Why wouldn't we still create a leg 2, 3, or 4 that we're going to replenish over time with the market dollars?
Well, and I think what we're finding here is it's so nuanced. And he's got his terms. And this is the challenging thing, I think, for listeners is they're going to hear different approaches, different strategies. Everybody's trying to trademark this, that, or the other. But once you understand the basic tenets of the total return approach or the flooring strategy, you can kind of mix and match, and you can start to build what is actually perfect for you. And this is what we find in our practice is one spouse may feel that they want to emphasize flexibility. One spouse may want to emphasize safety. And so you're starting to kind of build these plans that are much more custom than as brief as he can sum them up right here.
Well, and I see what he's saying about the risk wrap approach. I suppose I just don't see this as a separate approach, or I just would never use it. One of the two. He shares the risk wrap approach is blending investment growth potential with lifetime income benefits. That could be a variable annuity, a fixed indexed annuity with a guaranteed income benefit. I'm going, but isn't that the same as a protected income approach? We're just doing it with an indexed annuity or variable annuity. We're doing it with more upside potential and a little bit more flexibility.
All I could think was maybe this is somebody that hasn't retired yet.
Yeah, on the way to retirement, I get it. But once you're actually in retirement, I don't see how you would delineate from a risk wrap approach to a protected income approach.
I agree.
Personally.
Yeah, I agree.
And then he goes on to discuss the different types of inputs that are really going into his new model, the retirement income style awareness profile, this RISA profile, which would be a starting point before you actually get into determining your risk tolerance. So your risk tolerance questionnaire, this is going to precede that. And so he talks about the, really two primary retirement income beliefs and a scale upon those, the probability approach versus a safety first approach versus optionality versus commitment. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about the degree of certainty that you want around your retirement income strategy, probability versus safety. And we're talking about the degree of flexibility that you would like to have in that strategy, optionality versus commitment. And that's how I break them down in my book, is talking about the different degrees that we're picking up. And Marshall actually taught a class in the community years ago.
Quite a few years ago. Yeah.
And we created this curriculum around retirement planning. And part of the curriculum was built around this concept of starting with, let's determine which type of strategy would best fit your preferences around flexibility and risk. And then once we choose that, we're going to choose the appropriate allocation, leveraging that strategy based on your risk tolerance score. So we ranked them in that way. Do you want more or less flexibility? Do you want more or less risk? And we broke those down into 4 separate strategies. So there's a time segmented approach. And the time segmented approach you can do in 2 different ways. You could have a time segmented approach where you're guaranteeing that first leg of income, or you could have a time segmented approach where you don't have any contractual guarantees. You're using, say, individual bonds instead of actually using some type of guaranteed income product for that first leg. And then you have a flooring approach. So you have a flooring approach where you're creating a baseline of income, and then you're filling in the gap of those discretionary expenses with some type of market-based strategy. And then you have a lifetime guaranteed income approach where you're maxing out the amount of lifetime income that you get based on the income goals that you have. And each one of these has a different degree of safety, different degrees of flexibility.
It's trade-offs, right? You're just trying to assess those trade-offs and what is more favorable to you and your spouse and your family, and understanding what you're giving up from one strategy to the other. And then you're just trying to choose the best plan that helps you sleep well at night.
Yeah, so we tried to weigh each one of those things. And we said, okay, if you want the most flexibility, how important flexibility is to you on a scale of 1 to 4? And what we found is we just had to put numbers next to these strategies so individuals could make the selection right off the top.
It's kind of what Wade's doing here with his metrics, right?
Yeah, you're going to get the most flexibility with the time segmented strategy where it's risk-based without any contractual guarantees. However, that's also going to lead you down the road to the most risk at the same time. So you have the most flexibility, but you're also taking the most risk out of all those strategies. Then at the other end of the spectrum, you have the lifetime guaranteed income. Least amount of flexibility, but you have the most and highest degree of certainty, the lowest degree of risk. And what we typically find is it's rare that someone's going to go to one of those two extremes. Most of the time, we're going to land somewhere in between. We might have a flooring strategy, or we're going to use a time segmented strategy where we have a certain period of income guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's the funnest part of the job, is walking through these different strategies and showing, hey, do you want to leave more to the kids? Well, and that's one thing we didn't really touch on in this article, is if the estate and the legacy is a big deal, then you want to focus on different strategies. And I'm reminded of your client, Casey, who said, I don't want to leave anything to the kids. I want to spend every last dollar before
I think about them all the time, because that didn't happen very often. We were sitting down and reviewing this individual strategies. So we're going into a second or third visit after we've really dialed in where they're at today. Now we're looking at point B. How do we get you to where you want to be? And in order to actually quantify these things, we showed the upside downside potential of each one of those plans. The lifetime guaranteed income strategy, or the market segmented strategy, a blended strategy. We looked at the upside downside of each one of those, what could be left over when they pass away. And he said, Casey, I never thought I'd be a millionaire, never knew I was a millionaire until I opened up my 401k statement before I came in here. And I don't care what's left of the kids. Just make sure I have the same paycheck coming in every single month for the rest of my life. I never want to look at this stuff again. That was a set it or forget it mentality. And that was the starting point, for that conversation. Next up, we had to obviously get into the risk tolerance questionnaire. But I think as the article concludes here, it makes a great point. A risk tolerance questionnaire implicitly assumes that everyone wants to tether their retirement income strategy to the stock market. That's not true. And it goes on to say, at best, and this is generous, and assumes the only path to a retirement income strategy is to recommend a total return approach. We know that's not the case. There are a lot of different income strategies. I think if you're finding that your advisor is going straight to a risk tolerance questionnaire and not actually presenting several different income strategies and talking about the pros and cons of each, then you have a purely market-based advisor. They are going to keep all of those dollars in the market, and they're not presenting you with all of the options. And this kind of takes me back to another article we included in Weekend Reading this past week. It was from Forbes. It said why most financial plans actually fail at the end. And the article talks through how most advisors are not taking the right approach. They're leading with the solutions that they have at hand, the solutions that they want to present in front of you. They're emotionally absent. They're not talking about the different strategies and letting you make the decision. They're essentially making that decision for you when you walk in the door. You want to find a coach as the ideal guide in retirement. The article says the ideal advisor isn't a dictator, salesperson, a judge, or even a professor on a pedestal. You want a coach. And I think Wade is emphasizing that here. You want a coach that's going to walk you through different strategies, discuss pros and cons, really get to know you on a personal level, and not just throw you in a box. So I hope you find that helpful. You can get a link to the article in the show notes at retirewithpurpose.com. Just click on the podcast tab. You have a link there. Share this with your friends, and please don't forget to write an honest rating or review for the podcast. That's how we continue to get our message out there. We'll see you next week. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today, and I hope you found the information here insightful. Both the Howard Bailey team and I strive to provide you with a variety of different resources to help maximize your financial efficiency. That's why I want to offer you a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan. We'll meet with you either in person or virtually and help address your top financial concerns, as well as leading retirement pitfalls you might be unaware of. We'll also walk you through our Retire with Purpose planning framework, beginning with your why, then covering all other aspects of a well-rounded retirement plan, including liquidity, income, flexibility, estate, and tax planning. To get started, visit retirewithpurpose.com and schedule a meeting time that's most convenient for you. At no obligation, we'll visit with you and provide you with a complimentary financial roadmap. Schedule your free financial review now by going to retirewithpurpose.com. That's retirewithpurpose.com.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Retire with Purpose podcast. To learn more about how we can help and to get access to today's show notes, transcript, and the resources mentioned, visit retirewithpurpose.com/podcast. Again, that's retirewithpurpose.com/podcast. Also, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes if you would be so kind, as the more reviews we get, the more people we will reach. And if you found this information helpful, you can bet that there are many more people that need to find us. It's up to you to help. Thanks again for taking the time to listen, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Retire with Purpose.
Investment advisory services may be offered through Howard Bailey Securities, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc. owns the certification mark CFP and Certified Financial Planner in the U.S., which it awards to individuals who successfully complete CFP Board's initial and ongoing certification requirements. Howard Bailey Financial is a registered trademark of Howard Bailey Financial. All rights reserved. Information is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice. Howard Bailey Financial nor its advisors are qualified to give tax or legal advice. You are encouraged to consult with your tax or legal professional for guidance on your individual situation.